mode now. And just let me know when I'm good to start and I'll kick off.
Fantastic. Just kick-started recording, so you can actually start. So without further ado, all over to you. Thanks, Viresh.
Thank you, Narayan. So first of all, folks, hello. My name is Viresh Daya. I'm a partner technical architect at Microsoft. And part of my role is to build capability as well as capacity with our partners. Thank you, Narayan, for also inviting me to speak today. I'm going to spend 45 minutes or so just going through Dynamics 365 Commerce. I'm going to specifically focus on Omni-Channel and what does Omni-Channel mean. And then I'm also going to spend towards the latter end of the session talking a little bit about our connected store. That was not part of the agenda, but I thought I'd bring that in because that's some really cool stuff that we're working on. It's all in preview, but hopefully it'll entice you to take a look at it and explore that product set a bit more. So in terms
bonus content today, then
you got some bonus content. Yeah, it's short and sharp, but I think it's a teaser. You can always get in touch with me and I can start to provide further information. But, connected store for me is taking it to the next level when it comes to brick and mortar. And I'll talk you through the use cases, etc. But I think it's a great opportunity for you folks to talk to your customers on what you can do with regards to connected store. So let me get to that. In terms of the agenda, I'm going to spend a couple of minutes just talking about the current landscape and trends in retail, just to set the scene. I'll then go through commerce. I'll specifically focus on Omni-Channel and what that means. I'll then talk a bit about the roadmap. And again, in the roadmap, there's a whole host of stuff in there. I'll pick my top 3 items, and my top 3 items will be related to Omni-Channel. And then we'll do the same on connected store, and then we'll go on to Q&A. So let me make a start. So, looking at retailers and looking at the trends and the pressures that retailers are facing, and this is prior to COVID. Of course, they're facing additional pressures as a result of COVID. But some of the things that we've seen, and we're hearing this, and this is coming through not just from our engineering group, but also from our retail industry experts, that we're seeing online sales are now taking over from brick and mortar stores. So that's becoming very, very clear. Customers are also they have a desire and they want to experience an omni-channel experience, and I'll talk a bit about that later. Mobile is becoming one of the biggest platforms for us to use when we want to transact, and then it's about personalization and how do we make those products very personal to those shoppers. And that is something that Elena talked about earlier as well, in terms of customer insights and how you can ingest all that data, analyze it, put it through different models, and then make it, you make use of that data to further personalize experiences for your customers. And this is also, and the final point I'll talk about here, and this is really important, is that customers now have the ability to become more informed about products than employees. So, we have so many avenues that customers can go in and learn and understand products that we sell to be better informed. So when they are making that transaction, they're very well versed in what they're buying and the money they're spending and the value they're getting from the product. So, we're having to keep on top of all of these pressures to provide a unique experience to our customers. So keep these pressures in mind, and we'll try to address them as we move forward in the presentation. Okay, so when it comes to commerce, and this is not so specific to a product. So if these approaches are really agnostic of product. So don't think of dynamics so much now, but it's really about you need a new approach when dealing with your customers. And a couple of the things that we need to manage from a front of house side of things is to make sure that we can foster better brand loyalty, ensure that customers want to come back to us on a repetitive pattern. And how do we foster that brand loyalty, and how do we build those associations with our customers? So that's an approach that we need to adopt. The next thing is giving more empowerment to our employees, so that they are providing those outstanding services. So it's no more about it's no more transactional. So when your customer walks into your store, it's no longer about, let's just do a cash and carry transaction and complete that, and customer walks away with their product and that's it, done. No, it's about providing an experience. And you've seen a bit of that in the earlier session by Elena around clienteling, etc. And it's, giving that customer that experience and that service is going to differentiate you from other retailers on the market. And then it's coming back into HQ, which is all about simplifying simplifying your operations. So when I refer to HQ, not so much the headquarters in terms of where you do your inventory and your pricing, etc., but really the store and the store operations. And in there, it's about making those operations really, really simple, and making it easier and simpler for your cashiers, for example, to complete a cash and carry transaction, for your store managers to apply discounts, for your customers to place orders. So making those operations really straightforward is key to differentiate yourself from other retailers. And then we've got our back of house, so HQ. So it's about planning and merchandising. We're doing some fantastic work in that space. If you look at it from a planning and merchandising perspective, specifically planning, we now have demand forecasting that can be fed into Azure. You can use the default models, or you can build custom models and then feed that information back into Dynamics. The merchandising side of things, we've always been very good at that. We've got some great capability. If you've been part of the commerce boot camps, you would have experienced some of it. So providing that ability to be on the cutting edge of technology is really going to differentiate you. And then finally, integrated supply chain management. And when you look at all of these approaches, it's key that you adopt them so that you are able to differentiate and also help your retailers, your customers, get a proper experience from a retail organization. Okay, so looking at this slide, it really talks through a modern customer journey. And when you're looking at a modern customer journey, you want to be able to provide all of the approaches that I talked about on the previous slide. So brand loyalty, empower employees, simplify daily operations, etc., through a number of channels, and then unify those business processes. So you've got all these channels at the bottom, you've got all these processes that run, and you want to deliver this modern customer journey by combining all of this capability through a specific app, specific service, etc. And how do we get to that? And that's the question we're going to address right now, which is Dynamics 365 Commerce being an omni-channel solution. So let me get into that. So what is and apologies if some of this content is a bit of a repeat. I am focusing on omni-channel. So if you find that there's any specific questions that you want to call out, please go ahead and call out. If you find it's a bit of a repeat, then also call that out. So from a Dynamics 365 perspective, we call it omni-channel and not multi-channel. So the difference for me in the two of those is that multi-channel, yes, you have multiple channels in your solution. So your call center, your point of sale, your e-commerce, they're all channels. And a lot of our competitors have these different channels. But when we refer to omni-channel, what do we mean? We mean that you can start a transaction in one channel and complete it in another, right? So that's omni-channel capability. And what we do from a commerce perspective is we combine all our channels, turn them into omni-channel, and then we unify that experience across the board. So when you see a customer logging into their customer account on the e-commerce site, they're able to see specific details. When you go onto your POS, your cashier can effectively see the same details on the point of sale, and likewise in the call center. So by unifying that experience, we're actually providing some capability that allows your employees as well as your customers to experience a true omni-channel, a transactional system. Okay, so I wanted to bring this slide up just for those folks who are new to commerce, and just talk about the fundamental components of it. So you've got your headquarters, and this is where you manage setup of your channels. You'd also manage your products. You'll manage your assortments, your merchandising, your pricing, etc. And from a commerce perspective, that's the retail module, and that's where we would focus predominantly on ensuring that our channels are fully operational. Yeah, so it's got the headquarters. Next thing you have the Dynamics 365 or third-party ERP, and I'll just touch a little bit on third-party ERP because I think that's important. You know, a lot of questions came up during the boot camp as well as Commerce in a Day training, whether you can use Dynamics 365 Commerce with a third-party ERP. And the answer is yes, there are no limitations around that. You just need to build out those integrations. Of course, using Dynamics 365 Finance, Supply Chain, HR will make life easier on a deployment, but you can use a third-party ERP if you wanted to. And then finally, from a commerce perspective, it's all about the headless commerce engine. So this is where all the business logic, all of the extensibility, etc., resides, and it's headless. So you can use this against multiple devices. You can use it across multiple channels. You can have a single one for a single channel, or you can have one that's shared across multiple channels. That'll all come through your deployment architecture. But the point here is that it's headless. So it is really flexible in the way you use it. The other thing about the headless commerce engine, which is important to call out, is when you are doing extensibility and you want to build out a payment, integration to a payment service provider, you would do this through the headless commerce engine. If you want to build in surround services as well as third-party services, the commerce headless engine. So a surround service from our perspective, from a Dynamics perspective, if you were going to use fraud management, so fraud management is a good example. Ratings and recommendations is a good example of surround services. Third-party services could be things like payments, gift cards, etc. And that extensibility could all be achieved from the headless commerce engine. Okay. So now when we bring the channels into the fundamental components of retail, then we've got all our traditional channels. So all of us will be familiar with this: in-store, call center, and digital commerce. And from a product perspective, we provide capability in all of these channels. So remember, not just transacting through a channel, but starting transactions in one channel and completing it in another is what we refer to when we come up with Omni-Channel. So that is the difference between multi-channel and Omni-Channel. In terms of emerging channels, we have a number of emerging channels that we are starting to build out support. We don't have all of these currently out the box. There are ISVs out there, by the way, that do have solutions for marketplace, social, conversational. But the aspiration is over time to also add these channels into the solution, so that your modern customer who's sitting on their mobile phone, looking at Instagram, is able to see an advert and then start a transaction from Instagram, which ends up in commerce, as an example of a social channel. Marketplaces are typical, the ones that you are all familiar with: eBay, Amazon, etc. And how do we integrate with those marketplaces? And then finally, we've got the conversational type, where you can start a transaction through a conversation with a bot, as an example. And just to reiterate, these are the emerging channels and the traditional channels. And from a product perspective, no issue with the traditional channels. On the emerging channels, we are investing, and we will bring out capability, but there are ISVs out there that have solutions for these already. Okay, so when it comes to the users of the application and who they are, you have your store clerk, typically using the point of sale. Elena did a demo of the point of sale earlier on, so they would typically be using that. You've got your consumer shopper. They would be using your e-commerce site to complete transactions, not just complete transactions, but also get to understand and research more about your products. And then you've got your customer service reps who will be using Dynamics 365 HQ for call center capability. The other users that you would experience is bots and virtual agents for that conversational type of transacting, and then you've got business user and buyer. And the business user and buyer is really around B2B scenarios. And again, that's another topic that came up quite a lot. What are the capabilities of commerce from a B2B perspective? And the messaging we gave, which is still relevant right now, is that look, from a B2B perspective, commerce is not quite there yet. We have a team in the product group that are looking at this and looking to bring up some capability. They are making services available, even though you cannot see them. So a good example for B2B is completing transactions on account. So what does that mean? That means that when you're doing a purchase of items online, instead of paying for it at that point, you may want to put that on account and then pay a number of transactions as one payment at the end of the month, etc. Right? That on-account payment is already available in the commerce engine, but not exposed to the channels yet. So that's a good example of the work that product are doing. So with regards to B2B, from a commerce perspective, it's not there, but there is ongoing work. However, if you did have requirements for B2B, you may want to look at completing those in, for example, our supply chain capability, where you can take orders in bulk and then push them on account for processing and payment, etc. Yeah. Okay, so when you combine all your channels, so remember your traditional and your emerging channels, and then your user roles, and you put that on top of Azure, you get a true scalable commerce solution. And with regards to Omni-Channel, when you transact across in either of these channels, we are now doing more and more to light up those features. But when you transact against each of these channels, you will start to see some journeys and more of these journeys building out over time, where you can, for example, do buy online, pick up in store. And from a Azure and a global infrastructure perspective, there's continuous investment in ensuring that your commerce solution can be deployed and scaled out as you need and when you need to do so. And really talking about the Azure and the scale out, this slide really puts it into perspective. So if you look at this image, what it shows is a number of scale units supporting a number of stores in across regions, and there's different types of scale units being used here. So think of a scale unit as where you can deploy your commerce runtime engine, where you deploy your channel database. And what we have a scenario is in this imagery where you've got a scenario where you've deployed your commerce scale unit for a specific region to support stores that have high connectivity in store and into store. But then you've also got a scale units that are deployed to support stores that do not have that, so where they need to run offline, etc. And the messaging here is really simple. It's all about keeping your solution running and using different deployment topologies for your solution. Okay, so coming on to the exciting stuff now. That was just an intro into Dynamics 365 Commerce. If we're looking at the roadmap, it's published now, so go ahead and take a look at it when you get a moment. I will bring it up as well. So let me get there. And if you look at the roadmap, there's a couple of things in here that are really, really exciting. And I want to focus on the Omni-Channel stuff specifically. So the first thing that I can't wait to get my hands on is the shop similar looks. So what is this? This is not so much about related products. Yeah. So in Dynamics, you can configure related products. You can have recommendations using the ratings and recommendations capability. But shop similar looks is all about using AI and visualizing looks for your customers. So this is some cutting edge technology that's coming out. I can't wait to get my hands onto it, and I would encourage you guys to do the same when you get the capability. The next thing is PayPal connector, yeah, and this has been a request for such a long time. So happy that it's now coming out. The beauty about the PayPal connector is that it's not just specific to commerce, which is online stores, but it'll also be made available to brick and mortar stores. So really, you are providing your customers with capability to complete payments not just through PayPal Connect Online, but also within physical brick and mortar stores. And when I talk about omni-channel, that's what I mean about capability not just being specific to one channel, but being used across multiple channels. And the third one that I would specifically call out from a roadmap perspective that I think is important from an omni-channel perspective. Let me just flick back to my deck. Is the curbside pickup. So with COVID, what we've seen is that there's been a lot of requirements around retailers wanting to pick up their orders on the curbside, as well as inbound orders being dropped off on the curbside. And we've started to invest in this, and this curbside capability will not be specific to a single channel. You'll be able to use it across multiple channels. Okay, and then I just want to spend a few minutes on the capability we're doing around e-commerce, and I'll just bring that up. And you can see that the one thing that commerce is lacking, and when I refer to commerce, I mean e-commerce at this point, is the abandoned cart capabilities. So a lot of you who shop online would know that if you've started a cart and you sort of stop transacting on their cart, you may get some further messaging that encourages you to go and complete that transaction. And what we're doing with Dynamics 365 now, e-commerce, is that we're bringing in that capability to allow you to configure the application so that your users are in the cycle of starting cart. If they don't complete their cart journey, they're in the cycle of always being informed that they've got an open cart that they can go and complete. So, for me, that was a key thing. The other one is gift cards. Yeah. So if you've worked on commerce deployments, we've got some capability on gift cards, but typically we go and use a third-party service. Now with gift card purchases, with gift cards, we'll be allowing you to purchase, redeem gift cards online, as well as send gift cards to whoever through e-commerce. So that's some exciting stuff that's coming out over the next few months. So major thing for you, what do you want to take away from this year? Get your hands on this roadmap, go through the capabilities, understand it, and then as soon as the previews are made available, I'm sure we can get some demos set up, etc. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to Connected Store. And I'm going to talk about this and what this is. So some of you may already have had your hands on this, may not have, but Connected Store is all about brick and mortar. Yeah, so it's all about those physical spaces. And what we're doing with this year, and I think this is super exciting, and I can't wait to get more involved in this area. It's about how do you manage and how do you optimize your operations within the store by using visual recordings to understand what is actually happening in your store. So the concept is relatively straightforward. It's very, very easy when you put it down. So if you think of your physical store, in that store you will have a number of cameras, and then what we do is we take those camera recordings and we put it into an Azure physical device, and that device then aggregates that into data points, and then those data points are fed into software, and then that software understands and runs those data points through some machine learning and AI to then provide you with insights of your store. So insights to better optimize operations in your store. So that's all about Connected Store. So remember, this is all about the physical store, the brick and mortar stores. Now, when looking at it from a use case perspective, and this is important to understand that, what people will say to us, well, that's fantastic technology, but what do I actually use it for? What am I going to do with this? So we've identified three main areas that connected store can really be used. So the first one is about display effectiveness. And what does that mean? That means that on aisles, so those, if you go into physical store, you'll have aisles like in a supermarket, and the shelving at the end of the aisle, which is referred to as the end cap, stocks product, right? And it's well known that consumption of that product by consumers is a lot higher than product within aisles. So what Connected Store allows you to do is take imagery, so video recordings from that particular end cap, and then better understand how the performance is in that end cap and how to manage replenishment, etc., through those recordings. So an example could be that you've got some peanut butter on a shelf and it's being sold out relatively quickly. Now, normally what would happen is you would react to that, right? So as your store manager or assistant manager is walking around the store, they'll see that the end cap shelving is empty, and then they will ask someone to go and fill up, and that would take amount of time. So in that period, you've actually lost potential sales. Through observational data, which is your video recordings, you can start to understand what the capacity is of that store. You'll have a capacity of that shelving, and then you'll start to see drawdown of that capacity. And then your store manager will then be able to get a notification that will say, hey, hold on, you need to fill up here because we're running short on capacity. So it's becoming more and more preventative than reactive. So that's one example of Connected Store. The other one is queue management. So this one, funny enough, is not to do with COVID types of scenarios. This is all about how do you better manage queues in queue busting scenarios. So we've all been to a supermarket, loads of at a busy time where there's a significant amount of queuing, and what the solution does is takes observational data of those queues, sends notifications to store managers, clerks to open up additional tills so that you can better manage those queues. It also from a different perspective, it also provides further insights on dwells. So what does dwells mean? So if you have a single product on a shelf and you've got a significant amount of people hovering around that single product, trying to pick it up, there'll be notifications that can be provided to inform those personas that there is dwelling taking place and action is required. So it's all about making sure that these operations within your store are as fluid as possible. And one way we can do that is through queue management. And then finally, we have store occupancy. So, the difference between queue management and store occupancy is really just understanding what the traffic is within the stores. And you can then use that traffic or that ingested data from your observational data to better plan out your shifts, etc. So an example is if you're looking at a retailer that has a departmental store, and they would typically plan out shifts, but they don't know. Shifts are just based on availability of people, right? And but not really based on traffic within the store. So now with observational data, what you can do is say, okay, hold on, Monday and Tuesday are generally very quiet days, but Wednesday tends to pick up. Thursday is hot because we've got late night opening, and Saturday, Sundays is always at full capacity. So let's use the store capacity. Let's understand the store occupancy to better plan out what resources we need on those particular days, and that is all coming through that observational data being fed into artificial intelligence, so that it can provide those insights back to your personas. So those are the three capabilities we've identified. If any of you want to have a look at these, there's some collateral out there that you can look at it. There's some great YouTube videos I would ask you to leverage. If you want to see demos, then do get in touch, and we can help you set those up. And this is different from what you would see or what you have come to know about Dynamics 365 Commerce. This is a different type of a solution that you can now speak to your customers about. Now that covers what the scenarios are today in terms of the use cases for Connected Store. If I now move on to the next slide, we've now got scenarios, and we're lighting these up around COVID. Yeah. So with all vendors out there, and they're all doing something specific to COVID, we're doing something specific to COVID. One of the things that we are doing is trying to do more around store traffic. Yeah. And I'm not sure if how many of you follow the news on BBC, but Sainsbury's recently kicked off a program where what they're trying to do is, because of COVID, they're trying to build up what they call virtual queues. And what does that actually mean? So that means that you could be sitting in your car, and then you join a virtual queue rather than actually physically standing in that queue. And that's all about ensuring that you don't, even though you are in a queue and the store is not at full occupancy, you're still in the zone of picking up COVID. So by keeping you away from queues but allowing you to virtually be part of one, it's one way of their view of optimizing the operation. So Sainsbury's is currently going through trials at a number of stores on this capability. From a Dynamics 365 Connected Store perspective, we're looking at store traffic. And how do we take observational data, so all these recordings from our cameras, to better understand the traffic within stores and then better manage that traffic. And it's all about providing insights based on that observational data back to personas within the store. And then the next area that we're focusing on is curbside queue. Now you heard me talk about curbside capability earlier on in Dynamics 365 Commerce. So let's not confuse it. So there's Dynamics 365 Commerce, curbside capability. That's pretty cool. But there's also curbside capability coming out in Dynamics 365 Connected Store. And it's all about trying to manage not just fulfillment of that order, but manage the traffic of fulfilling that order. So if you've got heaps amounts of orders on the curbside, you need to manage the queuing of those particular collection of those orders, etc. And you would use observational data to drive out those insights. So these are COVID-specific scenarios that we are lighting up to provide some capability to retailers. Okay, so in terms of all this tech, all sounds cool. How you practically use it. So to deploy this, you need to engage with our product team. It's not just about software. You need to buy physical devices as well. So of course you need to have, you can use it. So you need to buy some Azure devices. So we call these the intelligent edge devices. These need to be deployed into your store. They can then hook up to your in-store cameras. And then once you've got that set up, then you can then start to ingest that observational data. Now, the process is you engage the product team, and then they will guide you through that when you want to take that deployment further. The one thing I would call out, though, is in terms of what has been the uptake in the market of this year. So we've seen a number of advisories that we're working with that are keen on Connected Store. And looking to put this into supermarkets as an example. Marks and Spencer's in the UK, in a single branch, they're putting this to trial at present and seeing how it drives their operations. I don't have the specific details of each scenarios that they've put in, but we can assume that it's one of the three mentioned, and one of the five, or a couple of the five mentioned from the previous slides. And the feedback that they've given us is that, look, it's fantastic technology, but it's not just driving our operations and making us more efficient there. It's really also having an impact in the culture within the store, because you're moving from this reactive culture to preventative culture. So that's great feedback. There is some details on this already available publicly, so you can start to take a look at Connected Store in more depth. Okay, so now when I look at the roadmap for Connected Store, so I talked about capability around five key use cases. So what were they? So they were, and I'll go back to the slide so you can see them visually as well. So the five were display effectiveness, all about the end cap, queue management, queue busting scenarios, think about that there, store occupancy, think about traffic and volumes of people in your store. Then you've got store traffic. This is specifically to COVID. Yeah, this is all about managing your capacity in your store based on COVID. And then the fifth one is about curbside queue. Now, when I look at the roadmap and I think about and I think about what product are doing from a roadmap perspective, right? It's all about platform. So now what they want to do is they want to integrate Dynamics 365 Connected Store into commerce, and that's fantastic, because what does that mean from a platform perspective? It means that we can now take observational data from Connected Store and feed that into Dynamics 365 Commerce. So when you think about replenishment as an example, or stock taken as another example, you would rely on information that sits within the system, and you would still do that. You'd rely on personas going out to aisles and physically checking. Now what we're saying is, well, hold on. Through Connected Store, we can observe that particular aisle, that particular section in that aisle. We can use AI we can use recordings, first of all, to take that data. We can then use AI to feed that and understand that and feed back into commerce on what the exact replenishment should be for that particular aisle. So, and now what commerce will do is pick that up and then send out distributed orders to fulfill that particular store. So that's one of the key things that we're looking at, is better integration with commerce. And there are some scenarios that they are putting together, but it's really making this available across platform. The next thing is integration with Teams. So if you heard the messaging that I've said throughout the Connected Store presentation, it was all about providing insights, and how do you provide these insights? There's various mechanisms. And when I refer to an insight, it's really a nugget of information that's provided to a specific persona that is actionable. So think of insights as something like that. Now, what we want to do is we want to light up these insights into Teams, so that you can have a Teams channel called Marks and Spencer's. In that channel, Marks and Spencer's branch A, for example. So you'd have a team in that you'll have channels that represent your stores. And then in those channels, you can then start to get notifications from Connected Store on how, what the tasks are and how to assign the tasks, etc. So more and more on the platform with Teams and integration with Teams. And the final one for all our platform folks is not just providing capability through Connected Store and Commerce, but also now allowing you to leverage Power Automate from a insight that comes from Connected Store. So let's put that into perspective. What does that mean? Let's say I've got a third-party ERP, Oracle. The Oracle manages the replenishment. Fine, we have no issue with that. You've got Connected Store deployed in your store. Okay, using the replenishment example, I'm seeing my end cap. I'm observing my end cap, and I can see that the consumption on the end cap is relatively high. Now what I can do is I can generate a notification, which is an action or a trigger in many ways. So it'll actually be a trigger in Power Automate that can kick off an action that can send a message to Oracle to go out and create a new replenishment order. So providing these notifications as triggers in Power Automate really open up Connected Store to lots more of scenarios that you can use with Connected Store insights. Connected Store data has already been moved into CDS. So once it's in CDS, then you can do a lot more. I'm not a Power Platform expert, but if I look at it from my perspective and my experience with it, as long as I can get it into CDS, then you can hook up a number of other Dynamics 365 apps as well as additional scenarios on the Power Platform to use those data. Again, the roadmap is there, so if you want to get into more details, then please go ahead and look at that. Okay, so now you've seen this slide earlier on. Well, not this slide, sorry, this piece of the slide earlier on where I talked about channels and omni-channel and personas and some stuff, fundamental stuff around commerce. And that's probably a bit of a repeat for you guys. I mean, I'm sure you've heard this a number of times, and you were looking for what's the new stuff in this presentation. A great question. The new stuff to understand is that it's no longer just about multi-channel, it's about omni-channel. So, starting things in one channel, completing the other, but then also leveraging connected store to provide additional capability within your commerce solution or through insights. So now when you formulate this picture together and you put it all you try and derive the value from commerce, you can really see that you've got capability that allows your consumers to really transact seamlessly through multiple channels. That's fantastic. But I can do so much more than that. I can also make my operations within the store a lot more optimal by using observational data from Connected Store. And when you tie all of this together, you have what, in my opinion, really a cutting-edge retail solution that differentiates from what's on the market. Okay, and this point really alludes to when I talked about Connected Store and lighting up Connected Store, using Connected Store capability within the Power Platform, and that predominantly through flows at present. All right, well, that's me done, Ryan. So I'm happy to take some questions now. Let me come back to the chat. I'll just do a short recap. So, for me, I know you're going to have a lot of other sessions throughout the day. I didn't want it to be too repetitive. So I started off by just setting the scene in terms of commerce and omnichannel. But what I did add in terms of additional information was around a Connected Store. Now, there were no demos, and we'll get those to you at some point. But I just want you to understand what the core concept of Connected Store is, as well as the key use cases, so that you are aware of these. So when you are speaking to your customers, etc., you are having the right types of conversations around commerce broadly, but also commerce plus Connected Store. So let me hand over back to you, Narayan, for coordinating the next steps.
Fantastic, thank you. To be honest, I'm still digesting. There's a lot of information to grab.
Sure.
I think I would say, if it is possible, are you able to share some of those links in chat window so attendees can back it and they can take away some readings with them?
Sure. I can do that. I'll show you some docs links. And look, I mean, from your perspective, this may have been a bit of information overload, as you've said, because there's a lot going on. There's a lot of information in the slides. But I would say, look, keep it simple. Think of omni-channel. Let me summarize this. Think of omni-channel as not, it's not multi-channel. So it's really starting something in one channel and finishing it in another. Yeah. And the second thing about omni-channel is that when we bring out capability, we don't bring it out for a specific channel. We bring it across all channels. So the investment is across all channels. So that's the first thing from an omni-channel perspective. From a connected store perspective, and to keep this really simple, it's really just providing the capability is to provide actions using observational data. Yeah. And when we talk about observational data, let me be more specific. It's really through recordings from cameras that are translated into actions so that you can act upon them. And once you've got your head around that, then it's really what scenarios fit best for your particular customer. So I will share some links that you can use to explore more on both of those topics.
Absolutely, and that's a good point you actually touched base. There are connected cameras, AI, and a lot of things going on, which is it's really exciting.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of information to grab as well, and this is what my personal feeling. But I'm sure many of the attendees would like to have a lot more deep dive into it and learn about it. So yeah, those links will definitely help us out.
Yeah. So the thing you mentioned there, which I just want to touch upon, is data, and this is untapped data. Yeah, that's the key thing here. Also, for a long time we've been able to. For a long time, retailers have had cameras in their stores. Yeah, but what have they actually done with those data other than identify fraud, or there may be some form of reactive management based on live visualizations of those cameras. But what we're saying now is, well, that this is untapped data that we can actually translate into something that you can action. Yeah, and there's not much more from an investment perspective that you need to do other than deploy a couple of Azure devices and buy some software. And now what you're doing is you're getting all this operational efficiency from the connected store product.
Absolutely, and like some of those videos I have watched, which actually shows a real-time heat map of which other shelves are empty with the products, what needs to be done, what kind of accidents are happening, like spilling or anything cleaning required. All these things, really, really exciting stuff. Like and also how the technology actually helps retailer to solve all these small problems, but collectively it becomes a massive problem as well. So it's brilliant. So we got one question from Ravinder Rana. When the public review will be available for Connected Store? Sure.
So let's just check that now if there's been anything that's been published. So I don't know if Elena, are you aware of when the public preview will be made available for Connected Store?
I believe they've announced recently. So if you go to Connected Store, there is a public preview availability.
Yeah. Can't remember the. Yeah, there we go. When is it going to be public?
Let me send you.
Yeah, I don't have the specific dates, but if you've got them, you can send them across in the chat. But I know it's there. I just don't know when. I know it's going to be made available. I just don't know when. But we can get that across to you. It's not an issue.
Excellent. That sounds good.
Let me put this in the link. So I'll just post this directly in the chat. And from here you'll get to all the information that I was just sharing earlier on. So use this particular URL can I post in here? Yes, I can. Fantastic. Okay, good.
That's great. I've just monitored like in a YouTube channel as well. There are a number of people watching live. We haven't got any questions. So if anyone has any question, please feel free to put it in the chat window, and we will be able to pass that to speakers, or we can answer those later on. Also, we have a dedicated session, Q&A session, end of this event, so we can cover your questions up in that. Viresh, while you on this sessions, I'd like to ask you one question, and that was the question raised at the time of registration, and I think many of the attendee has the same question.
Sure.
How can we get environments? Like for example, Dynamics 365, first-party apps like sales, marketing, all these things. You can sign up for 60 days or 30 days, and you can learn on it.
Yeah.
But for learning perspective, and if you are not a partner, how can we get hold of environment? And that was one of the key questions asked by a number of attendees.
Yeah, no, it's look. I mean, that question came up not only just in this, not only just for this session, but it came up in the boot camp. It came up in Commerce in a Day, and look, it's something that we're working on right now. And I don't have the answer that I can say to you today. That's what you need to do to get an environment. I do, but it involves costs, right? The issue is that e-commerce capability can no longer run or it's not optimal on a tier 1 type of environment. So you need tier 2 at least, right? And tier 2 comes with significant cost, and we need to be able to understand, or at least understand what that cost is going to. So that's why when you're working with customers on trying to do demonstrations of environments, of capability, etc., then you have justification of, or Microsoft has justification to take on this additional cost, and that's why we can provision environments for those types of engagements. But if it's something purely for learning, etc., we don't have a solution for that yet. My understanding is that coming out in later this year, there'll be something like a tier 1.5 environment that is somewhere between. At least what it'll do is it'll allow you to run commerce capability with a reduced cost base, and from there you'll be able to get an environment for learning, etc. Now that's the latest information I've got, and that may change, but right now the only way you can get that environment is if you are doing some work on behalf of a customer in a sales opportunity. Going forward, that may change now, and so just have to hold tight for a few more months whilst we figure out the best way to do that. Now that's the information I have, but I've got Elena on the call with me as well, and Elena, have you seen anything come through from engineering or the BG regarding environments as well?
No, I mean, I have the same answer as you. I know it's been a hot topic, but we know that the teams are working on it, but not more detailed than that.
Yeah. So I would just say, look, I can't give you the solution to that, or the answer you want to that question right now. I can be at least very clear about that. It doesn't exist. But what I can say is, look, it has been acknowledged, and there is work going on to solve it. We just don't know exactly what that is and when it'll be made available. But there should be no blocker if you've got a customer involved. And if there is a blocker, then you can reach out to myself and I can sort of help you remove that blocker, yeah?
Fantastic. Just for the interest of all the attendees, what I do when I'm learning commerce, so Microsoft Learn is one of the source I use, which has a lot of information and also number of screenshots and videos available. So that's one of the source I use. The second source I use is events like Commerce in a Day. So Viresh, do you have any visibility about when the next Commerce in a Day kind of events are coming up?
Yeah, I can share some information. So Commerce in a Day, it runs every week. It runs on a Tuesdays in the Americas time zone, and then it runs on a Thursdays in the EMEA time zone. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it runs on a Wednesdays in APAC, or at least on a Tuesday in APAC. So first of all, it runs every week. You just need to, depending on your time zone, there's a day. Now, normally we run these for partners. So if there's a registration process you need to go in and to join up. I can get you that link and share that with you. I don't have it on hand, but I can get Shelly to send that to me, then I can forward that on to you, Narayan, and you can circulate that. And then you just sign up, and then you come along, and it's a fantastic session because it's not so much about HQ. I mean, a lot of people on this call would know about the HQ and how you set that up and all that, but it's about e-commerce. Yeah, it's really focusing on e-commerce, and it's designed to help you build an e-commerce site within a day, yeah. And the purpose of this bootcamp, this Commerce in a Day workshop or training, is so that when you are talking to customers or you are trying to build solutions, you're able to spin up these sites relatively quickly without scratching your head and trying to figure out how to get things done. So Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, depending on your time zone, runs every week. I'll send you the registration link. Join up, and then we look forward to having you on those sessions.
Fantastic. So
Yeah.
Ravinder, yeah, this is what Viresh just mentioned. So he will share the information. If I receive it, I will make sure to circulate it within email.
Yeah, let me just stick that in there.
So
So
I
I take.
one question from Prashad.
Yeah.
Can throw some limelight on e-commerce implementation examples on telecom industry, if any?
Or telecom industry. So would that be like mobile phones as an example, or what would be the example, Prashant? Maybe you can shed some background information.
Prashad, if you like, you can unmute yourself and ask the question and elaborate a little bit more.
Look, okay.
Yep.
More on broadband providers. Okay, so it's more like a marketplace of telecom providers and using e-commerce to facilitate their marketplace. And the question is, have I seen any examples of that? The answer is not me personally. I've not seen examples. I mean, I've seen e-commerce being deployed more for like consumer goods, and that's the typical scenario that our commerce solution is used for. I can't see why there would be a barrier to doing it for telecoms, but we would just need more detail, Prashant, to better understand that use case and see if it's a good fit. So yeah, I haven't done it, and neither have I ever come across anyone that has yet. But we need more details to be able to say yes or no on that particular one.
Excellent. So I'm just monitoring the chat window. I don't think we have any more questions. Thanks, Prashad. Oh, okay. We got one more from Ravindran.
Yeah.
Kumar. Could you please say the approximate cost to set up D365 connected store? Also, do you have any list of camera, IoT sensors which supports connected store?
So there's two parts. There's two questions there. So the latter part, on the URL that I sent earlier on, guys, you'll get that information there, yeah, on what the system requirements are and all that sort of stuff. That's in the URL. The other one regarding the approximate cost, that's something I can't comment on, Ravindra, unfortunately. I mean, that you would need to engage with our engineering team, because the cost is not just about the physical devices. There's licenses, etc. involved as well. Now, if that's something that you want to take forward, I can definitely facilitate that conversation with the engineering team so they can understand your scenario better, and then they can come up with what a cost plan looks like. Now, for me coming from a partner technical perspective, I don't have a lot of conversations on the cost side of things, but maybe, Elena, do you sort of have some indication of how the cost on connected store would work, or some indicative costing, in your role?
No, unfortunately, I don't have as well. Especially because it's in a preview. I think maybe it wouldn't be a decision done with the product team. So I don't think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the. Sorry, Viresh.
No, I was just going to say that's the guidance we've been given by the product team anyway. It's, because it's preview, they haven't actually firmed up what the costing would be. But what the guidance is exactly what I've said to you is if there is a scenario, then get in touch with them and they can work through that scenario with you, come up with the best plan to deploy, as well as the associated cost with it from a Microsoft perspective.